Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming this evening to our Rotary meeting and our special speaker. For those of you who don't know about Rotary, Rotary is the largest international service organization, and we have over 1.2 million Rotarians across the world. We work closely in our community and globally on different projects and just serving our community and helping out, raising funds and donating funds. And we do a lot with scholarships and exchanges, international exchanges. Right now we have an exchange student from Thailand, and we're working on one for next year. So with that, I want to introduce our special speaker. Jeffrey Sachs is contacted us because his family was in Rotary, and he wanted to share the information that he had about personal protection and protecting your home. So with that, I'm going to introduce Dr. Sachs, Jeffrey Sachs.
Good evening, everybody. So how I got to Rotary was my parents. I'm originally from South Africa. My parents were lifelong Rotarians and avid Rotarians. When I was growing up, my father always used to drag me to lunchtime meetings. You got a lecture, you need to come. And it was a great camaraderie, and that continued when I immigrated to America. He used to come for visits. He says, we got to go for a meeting, find a Rotary club for me. And that's what I used to do. So knowing what Rotary does, very happy to be here and try to give back a little bit. So this is my actual second career. I've spent the last 45 to 47 years practicing maxillofacial and oral surgery in Chestnut Hill, and recently retired, and I've always had a passion for defense. I was originally I did compulsory military service in the South African military, and so I do have a background relative to firearms. I am certified by the USCCA, which is the United States Concealed Carry Association, and I'm also NRA firearms instructor. Tonight, what we plan to do is developing a personal protection plan for oneself in order to try and avoid conflict, and then we'll move on to doing a home protection plan for your family and yourself as well. We have to understand that our personal safety is our responsibility, and as such, we need to educate oneself in this. It would be foolish to think that violence cannot touch us and our loved ones. And as a result, we need to be proactive in our safety planning and not reactive. This talk is not primarily about firearms. However, I will be mentioning the use of firearms as a tool for one's defensive protection. There are many other tools, such as baseball bats, pepper spray, tasers, which incidentally, you do need a firearm license to buy and to operate in the state of Massachusetts. And no matter what, if it's a firearm or a taser or a baseball bat, in certain circumstances, this can be used. These tools can be considered, in certain circumstances, I said, the use of deadly force. So we need to know the law in order to protect ourselves when we legally try and defend ourselves. Just remember, when we're faced with deadly circumstances, you need to have equal and better tools at your disposal to defend yourself. Don't bring a knife to a gunfight. It usually doesn't end well. So these are some other defensive tools besides firearms. We have tasers, we have stun guns, pepper spray, batons, baseball bats, and personal alarms. So what we plan to do for the personal protection plan in order to try and avoid a conflict, we're going to discuss situational awareness, and we'll go deep into the color codes of awareness. We'll discuss how not to look like a victim, and we'll discuss how not to make yourself a victim, not to put yourself in a position where you easily can become a victim. Relative to the home, we'll discuss a home security plan, and mental exercises. All these techniques can be learned and honed in order to avoid confrontation. This talk is not about defensive measures, which is a whole different topic, but you have to recognize that the best way to defend yourself is avoiding a conflict in the first place. As I mentioned, we're not directly considering and specifically about firearms. Let me be clear, a firearm is the last line of defense in a personal home security plan. Unfortunately, we all think it's the first thing to consider. So let's listen to this lawyer.
The most common criminal charge we're defending against is aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Because what happens is the client was facing something scary, frightening them, and they're carrying a gun, legally carrying a gun, and they pulled a gun out and they pointed it at that person and they said, "Stay back, I'm prepared to defend myself." Which sounds like perfect self-defense, right? That same conduct checks all the boxes for a criminal charge of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. What is assault? It's putting someone else in fear of harm. But what are you doing when you're pointing a gun at someone? You're putting them in fear of harm. You're telling them, I will hurt you if you don't stop doing what's scaring me. It's aggravated because you're threatening them with deadly force harm, and it's with a deadly weapon because you're doing it with a gun. Collectively, in most states, that's good. That's a felony, good for 10 to 20 years in prison. Keep in mind, I'm talking about mothers, fathers, people who've never been in trouble with the law a day in their lives, are now looking at a 20-year felony sentence.
So, we sometimes will tend to use a firearm to try to diffuse a situation which we think could be volatile, but in such, and with the law the way it is, we can be considered the perpetrator and then be charged with aggravated assault. So we have to be very careful. So rather than the first line of defense being a weapon, it's far better to avoid the confrontation totally. And this we can do with a comprehensive defensive plan with the use of situational awareness. So to reiterate, why have a personal protection plan is to keep you and your loved ones safe and avoid confrontation. It was appropriately stated by Colonel David Grossman on the lack of preparation for emergencies. He said, denial of preparation for emergencies kills you twice. It kills you once at the moment of truth when you realize you were not prepared for the emergency, you didn't develop a strategy, you didn't train for the emergency, your defense was wishful thinking, hope cannot be a strategy. This denial will kill you a second time if you physically survive the incident, you are psychologically shattered by fear and helplessness and the horror of the moment of truth that you did not prepare. So why avoid a conflict in the first place? It's the only guaranteed method of surviving a violent encounter is avoid it in the first place. So if you want to do anything, be safe, avoid the conflict. And if I asked anybody in the audience, what do you think is worth protecting? Most of you will say, probably my physical protection and the protection of my loved ones. But if you plan appropriately, you gain much more than just your physical protection if you plan on a global basis. Firstly, you can plan for your physical protection utilizing situational awareness and your training in defensive measures. Secondly, you can plan for legal protection. If you're going to use any defensive measures, you need to know the law in order to protect yourself when using defensive actions. Thirdly, you can plan for financial protection by appropriately insuring your property and assets. Now, we'll mention this, and I'll mention it, and it should be an absolute for everybody who has a concealed carry weapon, firearm, or just maybe a weapon at home to defend themselves in their house. You need to have what's called concealed carry insurance. It's a little bit of a misnomer. It applies to any firearm, not a concealed carry firearm. And the reason being, in the state of Massachusetts, if you use a firearm, whether you fire it or not, and you use it 100% in a legal manner, you are going to go to jail. There's no question about it. And as such, you're going to need finances for a lawyer, for bail, for court costs and depositions, and income disruption, because you're going to be spending an inordinate amount of time in the courts of law defending yourself. So there's no question about it. It's very expensive in order to defend yourself. This insurance is fairly inexpensive, and it's an absolute for anybody that owns a firearm. And now, last but by no small measure, you gain emotional and moral protection in knowing that you did everything humanely possible in planning and preparing before you were forced to use defensive measures. So,
is that insurance related to a home insurance?
No, it's very specific. It's offered by a good couple of companies. It's offered by the USCCA. It's offered by CCW. And just Google concealed carry insurance, and you'll find so many articles, and they'll give you the highlights as to which is the best one. And I think I pay for the highest coverage, and it comes to $500 a year. It's well worth it. There was just an incident in Massachusetts in pre-winter where somebody had to defend themselves at a protest, where they got attacked by one of the protesters, and he shot the person. The person didn't die, but he was attacked. He's now defending himself. He still has, this is going on now a good many months, 6 months or so. He still has aggravated assault charges against him, which is probably looking at 15 years or so. The perpetrator who attacked him has no jailable charges at all. His defense at the moment is over $1.2 million. So if you don't have this insurance, you are dead in the water. It's almost.
What are the limits?
I don't have the limits offhand, but that would research that, and they'll give you, all depending on the various degrees of coverage you want, they will tell you what the limits are. But the nice thing is that also in Massachusetts, I can tell you now, it's going to be very difficult to find a lawyer that's well versed in firearm laws, because it's not a state that. So they will find somebody for you. They have a 1-800 number, these insurance companies, that you call them immediately, and they will help you out. Well, relative to that as well is there is a protocol for if you ever are involved in a shooting, you need to know what to do in the aftermath, which is so important relative to your protection. So you should do some research relative to that if you do have a weapon, because the aftermath is just as important what you do as what you did during the incident. And I don't mind questions during the lecture at all. That helps to clarify things. So, with reference to Massachusetts, many states in the country have what's called the Stand Your Ground law and the Castle Doctrine. Massachusetts has not adopted these laws. So what does it mean? The Stand Your Ground law means that if you are threatened in a space with deadly harm, you're allowed to respond and defend yourself, as long as you legally are allowed to be in that space. So if you're in a supermarket, a parking lot, in a movie house, a function hall, wherever you are that you're legally allowed to be, you're allowed to defend yourself if threatened with deadly force. The Castle Doctrine, your home, your castle, if you're threatened in the confines of your home, you're allowed to defend yourself with deadly force. We don't have these two laws in Massachusetts. As such, we are obligated to consider all avenues of conflict avoidance before we can legally use defensive force, which may be deadly, which means you have to find an avenue of retreat if it is one. If there is no avenue of retreat, you can defend yourself. It also means that you don't have to leave a loved one or one of your kids and escape and leaving them in danger. If that's the case, you can defend yourself. But in a conflict that you're involved in, even in your home, you have to retreat before you defend yourself if there is an avenue of escape. And if you act, the golden rule is, when reacting to a situation, did you act as a reasonable person did? Prosecutors will use this reasonable person test in court as their first challenge to your action.
When it comes to the law of self-defense, you'll often hear people speak of the reasonable man or reasonable person standard. You might be wondering just who this reasonable person is and what this really means. The idea of a fictitious, reasonable person has its beginnings in Old English law, which is the source for many of our modern American concepts. It was first used in a civil lawsuit in 1837, where a person stacked bales of hay on a property that he'd rented in such a way that it was prone to spontaneously igniting. Despite being repeatedly warned about the danger, the defendant did nothing, and as expected, the hay caught fire and ended up destroying 2 of the landlord's cottages. The landlord sued his tenant, and the court applied the reasonable man standard and found that while the defendant may not have appreciated the risk, a truly reasonable person would have. So he was found responsible and ordered to pay damages. The reasonable person standard is meant to be an objective one by requiring the level of caution that an ordinarily prudent person would exercise in substantially similar circumstances. The idea of a reasonable person has also been applied in criminal law, where someone has used force to defend himself or herself. Nearly every state's laws require that when force be used, it be used only when reasonable. And so the question that prosecutors, judges, and juries must decide is whether a reasonable person would have used force in the same circumstances. Now, since this reasonable person doesn't actually exist, the question that the prosecutor instead will have to ask himself or herself is, what would a jury think if I presented the facts? If the prosecutor believes that the jury would agree that the use of force was reasonable, then the prosecutor would most likely choose not to file charges. On the other hand, if the prosecutor believes that a jury would find the use of force unreasonable, then they most likely will file charges. Now, keep in mind that the average jury member is picked from the community and not from your local shooting club.
So, and understanding that the best possible outcome to any violent encounter is avoidance, and why, if we remember, protects you physically, legally, financially, and morally. So your options are avoid, escape, and defend. And all these actions are going to be time dependent. If you can identify this threat with prior alertness, in the majority of circumstances, you can avoid this unwanted encounter. This can only occur if you are vigilant and alert. For example, if a threat is 100 feet away, you have minutes to avoid or extract yourself from the circumstance and avoid the threat. You can move quickly in a different direction. You can seek a hiding place. However, if you recognize this threat late, you only have seconds to try and escape and defend yourself. If the threat is within 21 feet of you, which is called your danger zone, at this stage you are committed to defend yourself, as avoidance is not possible. And we'll discuss this 21 feet. It's not an arbitrary number. It has some significance. So gaining crucial seconds, how do we do it? Is with situational awareness. What is situational awareness? It's awareness of our vicinity and people and objects within our environment. So you need to know your landscape, you need to know who's in your landscape, and you need to know the objects in that area. We do this repeatedly, and I guarantee you every one of you is guilty of this, being on your phone. When you're on your phone, you have a attention span of about a 3-inch circle around your hands. You have no ability to know what's going on around you at all. Even when we're casually walking around, down the street, our attention span is within a 3 to 5 feet radius in front of us with no situational awareness. We don't know what's happening behind us, to the sides of us, at all. So this is a real unfortunate incident. It happened in the New York subway system about 2 months ago. Now, I'm not going to demonize this person. He had a criminal act perpetrated on him, but as I said right in the beginning, we need to take responsibility for our own protection. So in this, I'll let this run for a second, then we'll discuss what he could have done differently.
CBS News New York obtained this disturbing surveillance video showing a victim described by police as 45 years old standing on the platform when a man in a blue hooded jacket comes in from the left side of the screen, then out of view for a moment, and then back from the right side of the screen. With no apparent warning, he pushes the man just as the train pulls in. We spoke to a...
So that happened in the New York subway system, as I said, about 2 months ago. Here we have an innocent individual on his cell phone, no situational awareness at all. He doesn't know what's in his environment. He doesn't know the people or anything about it. In addition, we will discuss this as well. It's common sense. You have to make yourself not be a victim. He's standing right at the end of the platform, which makes him a very easy victim. So if he needed to be on his cell phone, he should have gone to the back of the platform with his back against the wall, scanned around him, make sure he was safe, then get on his cell phone. But you cannot also, with no situational awareness, position yourself at the edge of the platform. As I said, it's not his fault. This was a criminal act, but we have to take responsibility for our own actions. So we need to gain those crucial seconds with situational awareness and this prior alertness to defend ourselves. With situational awareness, our heads need to be on a swivel, with us continually scanning and evaluating what is in front of us, to the sides of us, and behind us. As previously discussed, conflict avoidance is time dependent. We know why conflict avoidance is so important. Invariably, when there is a shooting that's publicly televised or reported on, the public say, well, why did the police have to shoot that individual? They could have just shot the knife or the gun out of his hand or shot him in the leg or arm to disable him. They didn't have to kill him. We have to understand that if anybody is in your danger zone and 21 feet of you, it takes that perpetrator 1.5 seconds to close that distance to engage you. Very short amount of time. It takes a well-practiced and trained shooter 1.5 seconds to unholster his firearm and place 2 shots on the target. And these are not aimed shots, they are point-of-aim shots on body mass. So it becomes almost impossible to defend yourself with your firearm if you find yourself within that 21 feet, that danger zone. So what it means, our focus needs to be on being smarter, not faster with your firearm. Smarter will avoid you finding yourself in that danger zone due to astute situational awareness. Situational awareness is far better in saving you in an emerging situation than your firearm skill.
The Tula drill, a self-defense training exercise, says that the average bad guy with an impact weapon, like a knife or a club, can cross 21 feet in about 1.5 seconds, which is roughly the same time that the average person can draw a firearm from a holster and put 2 shots on target. At distances less than 21 feet, the good guy with the gun will typically not have enough reaction time to draw his weapon. This should encourage the good guy to do what he can to create more distance between himself and his adversary. The Tula drill in no way implies that you may not shoot someone unless they are inside of 21 feet. It is not a legal standard which mandates a minimum distance of 21 feet before you can defend yourself. It's a training standard which encourages good guys to create space between themselves and the bad guy. At distances greater than 21 feet, a typical person with a handgun can draw the gun and place 2 shots on target before the bad guy can cover the distance and strike them with a melee weapon. To better protect yourself and those you love, practice draw speeds and learn the situational awareness needed to keep greater distance between yourself and the bad guy.
Operative words there, learn situational awareness to keep greater distance between you and the bad guy. So, just to get back to that slide, what is situational awareness? Knowing your landscape, who's in that area, and objects within that area. So let's have a look at this. You got this individual threatening you. You haven't got much reaction time to defend yourself. What is situational awareness? Know the objects. Look at this large tree here. Make a beeline for that tree. Let him chase you around that tree. Eventually he'll get very bored and abort that attack. So your situational awareness, you need to know what's in the object within the landscape as well. And for us, practically speaking, any place we go to, we're in this library, you have to know exactly where the exits are. You have to find out what can hide you, concealment, what can give you cover. Cover is anything that will stop sharp objects such as bullets. When you're in a movie house, when you're in a restaurant, know the exits and multiple exits. Parking lots, grocery stores. You need to use this situational awareness to protect yourself. If you don't, you're dead in the water.
The tool.
So now that we have an understanding of situational awareness, let's discuss not looking like a victim. In public, if anyone is close to you within your protective bubble, make eye contact with them. Let them know that you see them and you are aware of them. Additionally, walk tall, step out of the line of path that you're walking in. It makes you unpredictable to anyone monitoring you. Speed up and slow down. Walk in public with confidence. Body erect, head up, walking faster than the crowd. Walk with a purpose. If you're slouching around, ambulating, like you don't know where you're going, you look like an easy victim. Stay alert, as criminals are well schooled in their trade and will always look for an easy target. They don't want to get into an altercation. They like the quick smash and grab. You have to understand that size does not matter. So if you think you're a big burly guy, you're not going to be a victim, you're so incorrect. It is who looks like a victim. So yeah, we have a guy. It's a big burly guy. He's sitting on this park bench. Normally you wouldn't like to get into an altercation with him. He has some size to him. However, what he's doing, he's a total victim. His situational awareness is 0. His focus is 3 inches around his hands. Very easy for somebody to ambulate behind him, put him in a headlock and do him some harm, or walk past him, grab his phone and take off. Because he has non-existent awareness, he additionally will not be a good witness. He had no idea who did this or what happened. Let's contrast that with a 100-pound female sitting on this bench. She's sitting erect, upright. She's making eye contact with everybody that passes within her protective bubble. And I don't mean that she's staring people down. She's just a fleeting glance, letting them know that she sees them. Very difficult for anybody looking to do mischief to approach her and accost her. She'll see them. She'll start issuing commands. Stay back. Don't come any closer. I'll scream. I'll call 911. She's not going to be a victim at all because there's going to be a lot of public attention to what's happening. These people, perpetrators, do not like public attention. So she's much less of a victim than this big burly guy. So size does not matter. It's what you're doing. Don't let the concept of situational awareness overwhelm you and create anxiety. These are skills that you can hone and practice. Out in public, play games, look around, pick out people who seem to be oblivious of their surroundings and others around them. Who's on their phone? Who has earpods in and listening to music and on their phone as well? These are great victims. Besides having visual impairment with no situational awareness at all, they have auditory impairment. They have no idea what's coming up on them at all. So play games, look around, and then when you find people with no situational awareness, you'll realize that you can't be doing the same thing. So Let's delve into the deeper aspect of situational awareness with the color codes of awareness. These color codes were developed by this, we're saying Jeff Cooper, Colonel Jeff Cooper, that lack of a plan kills you twice. It was developed in the Pacific arena during World War II to aid the military to predict the population if there was a threat against them when they were embedded in the population or their military foes. This Colonel Jeff Cooper had readapted these situational color codes for the civilian population to recognize violent encounters and have the civilian population avoid them in the first place. So the first color code of situational awareness, which we cannot be in at all and in public, is not something that this is something we need to avoid totally, is being oblivious to who and what is around you. You're in your own world and essentially advertising that you're an easy victim. If you carry a concealed firearm, you cannot present yourself in public in condition white, where you are oblivious and no situational awareness at all. Very easy for you to become a victim, be disarmed, and your own firearm used against you. So this is not any type of activity you need to be in condition white of situational awareness. The next cascade to situational awareness color codes is yellow, where we are aware. In yellow, we are attentive and aware of our surroundings. Our eyes are up and alert and scanning. We absolutely identify exits, cover, concealment in our environment. You remember, wherever you are, restaurant, supermarket, wherever you are, you need to know, yes.
Don't you think that somebody talking, not just looking at the phone, but actually talking on the phone, might discourage an evildoer because he would know that you would immediately say, I'm being attacked?
He probably get to you before you realize what's happening. And so it's not something that you would react to logically, say, I'm being attacked. At that stage, if you are attacked, you probably drop your phone, your hands will go up, and you'll try to defend yourself. So we know where cover is, concealment, and exits are. You are cognizant to avoid confrontation and arguments. You make eye contact with all within your protective bubble, letting them know that you see them. So the next color code is condition orange. You have heightened awareness. So we've gone from no awareness to aware to a heightened awareness. In your heightened awareness, you observe that a potential threat is developing and may escalate rapidly. As such, you have to prepare a plan of action. You again identify covers that you can use, barriers or an exit strategy. You take preemptive action. You turn around, leave that area. You change direction. You increase your distance. You make simple, direct verbal commands of stay back, don't come any closer. So this only, you remember, all our actions are time dependent, but we've gained time because we've gone from being alert and now we have heightened alertness. You have to decide on a mental trigger for if an individual is refusing your verbal commands and moving closer into your bubble. At that stage, if the threat continues to escalate, this is the time for you to run away and shout for help. And our final color code of situational awareness is condition red. In condition red, you cannot extract yourself from the threat. At this point, you must take defensive action. You have to try and escape, take cover, or engage the threat. It's important that you prepare yourself to take action and trust your training and instincts, whatever training you did in your defensive training. So, in summary, having followed the cascade of situational awareness, yellow, orange, and red, we never want to be in white. Anybody who has a concealed carry weapon should always be in public in condition yellow, where they are aware and have good situational awareness. Because of our cascade, we're now able to gain time to deal with threats and mount an adequate response. Ideally, our first action would be escape. If the threat continues, we start issuing commands. You can, if you do carry a firearm, hold it in what's called a low ready position. If you have a taser, baseball bat, you don't hold it over your head threatening to hit them, you hold it in a low ready position. So important. If you remember the lawyer right at the beginning of the talk, he said if you point a firearm at somebody, you, in certain circumstances, can be convicted of aggravated assault. So when you hold it in a low ready position, all you're doing is indicating to that perpetrator you are armed and you're able to defend yourself. You're not threatening them. And they will hopefully break off that attack because they see that you are appropriately prepared. If the threat continues, you have no option to engage but to defend yourself. I'll mention this now. However means that you do defend yourself, act as a reasonable person and within the confines of the law. So, reasonable force, and there's 4 golden rules for your defensive actions. These rules you should know by heart if you do plan to defend yourself with whatever tool that you may have. You must be in reasonable fear of death or grievous bodily harm, and this must be immediate. No lesser force is sufficient to stop the threat. When I say no lesser force, you have to use reasonable force. Reasonable force is considered the minimum amount of force to end the threat. As such, it's a level of force that does not exceed the threat. You must be the innocent party in this conflict. You must have no reasonable means of retreat and escape. So important in Massachusetts. So you need to understand these if you want to be in the confines of the law and abide by the law. And we'll discuss these in a couple of minutes. So now that we've understand situational awareness, conflict, the color codes of awareness, how not to look like a victim, areas to avoid. We saw that right from the beginning with that individual on the subway platform where he was standing right at the edge of the platform. Blind spots are notoriously problematic. Blind spots can be alleys at the side of end of buildings. It can be trees, tall bushes, concrete pillars, vehicles. Anything that you can't see what's behind those vehicles or those areas. So if you walk very close to that blind spot, you have really, and there is a perpetrator that's trying to accost you, you really have no reaction time at all to extract yourself from that threat. It's on you immediately. As such, always take a wide berth around these blind spots because you can peer in to those blind spots. And if you do see a threat, you can extract yourself by running away. Yeah, we have 2 young ladies, deeply involved in conversation, no situational awareness at all. They're coming to a blind spot. They are going to get attacked, and they have no ability to defend themselves at all. If they took a wide berth around this area, they could see somebody in their blind spot, and they could run away. So be very aware of blind spots. Other areas to avoid, notorious, are alleyways. Alleyways are dark, isolated, away from the public eye. Who likes to ply their trade in those alleyways? Criminals. And they love it because it's isolated. Nobody sees what they're doing. Stay with the well-trodden routes, the well-lit routes. Stick with the crowds. Don't think you're going to take a quick trip through the alleyway to aid you to get to your car quickly. When we drive into parking garages, most of us, it's human nature, will say, let me park away from the rest of the cars because I don't want somebody to open their car door and ding my car door with theirs. So we look for a nice isolated spot. Here's one, nice and dark, away from the public eye. Not a good idea. Only mischievous people will be hanging out in this area and they can, if they want to do harm to you, it's nice and isolated, nobody knows the better. Stick to well-lit areas where there's a lot of public traffic. Also, when you drive into the parking lot, garage lot, first thing you look for, where's the exit? You identify cover. Cover, as I said, if you remember, stops sharp objects like bullets. Concealment is a hiding place. You can hide behind cars if there's anything bad happening in this area. But the most important thing is that you've recognized where the exit is, you can make a rapid escape. Mostly common sense. So now we're going to discuss some scenarios, and you'll see how complicated it is to mount an appropriate legal defense. And so it's far better to avoid a confrontation than get involved in a confrontation. So let's take this one. You've just completed a recreational baseball game. You've won, and you and your buddies are going to go across to the pub, across the road, and celebrate, have a couple of beers. So you pack up your gear, you start walking to the pub, you get into the pub, it's pretty crowded, and as you get into the pub, somebody steps on your toe, and you mutter, "You idiot." This guy looks at you, he's not too happy with that, he shoulder checks you. You don't take too kindly to that, so you forcefully push him to the ground. He gets up, pulls out a knife from his pocket, and starts rushing at you. As such, you take out a baseball bat, and as he approaches you, you hit him across the head and you kill him. Have you done the legal thing in your defensive action? Well, let's discuss it. There was no avenue for escape. He was rushing you. It wasn't possible to escape that situation. You used reasonable force. He was attacking you with a knife, and so you had to respond relative. Your life was in immediate threat of grievous bodily harm and death. So you've qualified relative to those three circumstances. Are you the innocent party? No. You actually started this. You instigated it. You then exacerbated it by pushing to the ground. So in defending yourself legally, your life legally, you're still going to be charged with a criminal statute, and you're probably going to go to jail because you're not the innocent party in this whole circumstance. So, next one. You are a cautious person. You carry a concealed carry weapon. In addition, you carry some pepper spray. After a long day of work, you now want to head home. You're tired. You know where your car's parked. And it's a long way to your car, but you do see a shortcut, a little alley. You go into the alley. It's pretty dark. And as you're walking down the alley, an individual much smaller than you actually comes out and exposes himself from behind a dumpster. He lifts up his shirt and it shows that he has a automatic weapon in his belt. And you put up your hand, you say, "Don't hurt me." He goes for his weapon, so you do carry a concealed weapon, and you draw yours and you fire 2 shots at him. You miss once, you hit him in the shoulder the second time. He drops his firearm, which slides underneath the dumpster. He hasn't got access to that firearm, but he's still hell-bent on getting to you. So he keeps approaching you. You say, "Stay back, don't come any closer." And as he gets to what you consider your danger zone, you shoot this individual again. Have you acted legally? Well, let's consider. You were in the alley, first mistake, not a legal problem, that's your idiotic move. Don't go down the alley. He threatened you with a firearm. There was no reasonable means of escape. You couldn't turn around and run away. He'd shoot you in the back. Your life was in immediate threat of danger and grievous bodily harm and death. You used appropriate force. You certainly were the innocent party in this whole episode. So that's it. Great. You acted 100% within the law. But what happened afterwards? Yeah, you got a disarmed person, much smaller than you, threatening you. You shot him. You had pepper spray. Did you use reasonable force? No. He was unarmed, much smaller than you, and you had an alternative. The other alternative is, he's now injured. Turn around and run out of the alley. Call the police. So in this circumstance, that would be considered a kill shot. You are going to be charged with murder in this circumstance. So you understand how difficult all these scenarios are. Far better to avoid a confrontation, use situational awareness, use your color codes of situational awareness to give you some forewarning, which is what's going on, and it protects you every way you can be, legally, financially, morally, and physically.
Situational awareness is an invaluable tool for everyday life and is especially important when you carry a firearm. It's something you can practice anywhere, in traffic, at work, in a waiting room, in your own home, when you're carrying and when you aren't. Practicing situational awareness helps keep you in tune with the dynamics and interactions in your surroundings. It is too easy to become distracted in a world of constant changes, unexpected challenges, and we cannot ignore it, a world where everyone is plugged in with earbuds and screens. Situational awareness isn't just risk assessment and how to prepare and prevent bad encounters. It's also identifying potential opportunities for you to be safer, more productive, and able to react quickly and effectively. The more you practice it, the better you become at analyzing the world around you as it happens.
So, somebody asked about the concealed carry insurance. This is one of the companies that CCW Safe that has the concealed carry insurance. The other company is the USCCA, and those are probably the two best companies that offer. The NRA offers it as well. There's a bunch of other ones. These are the two most reputable: the CCW Safe and the USCCA. I would strongly suggest that you have a look at these companies. So to summarize, the best outcome for any violent encounter is avoidance. Use situational awareness and the progression of your color codes. Escape to fight another day. Remember not to look like a victim, not to place yourself in a position where you are an easy victim. Take responsibility for your own safety and that of your loved ones. That's probably the most important thing. So now, let's moving on to home security. We know our homes better than anyone. We know the layout of our homes and where our family spends most of the time. Identify the strengths of your homes and the weaknesses of your homes. Understand that you spend most of the time in your home in color code white, which means that you're inherently vulnerable. We have some interesting statistics from the FBI relative to burglaries and home invasions. The front doors entered 34% of the time, back and screen doors 22% of the time, and the first floor windows 23% of the time. What does that mean? It means that we need to pay attention to these areas to harden them, to make it more difficult for perpetrators to get into our home. You have to understand, normally installed doors, it takes probably just 2 swift kicks to knock them down and to breach those doors. These doors can be hardened very easily to require at least 13 kicks in order to breach these doors. Why is that important? Gains us crucial seconds. With crucial seconds, we have more ability to mount appropriate defense than rather a reactive defense.
That was too easy. Kicking in a front door with one swing of the leg. That's because standard doors come with these little screws to secure the strike plate. But in just a few seconds, you can take a huge step that will help prevent you from being a burglary victim. You simply take out those small half-inch screws that are here in the door and put in one of those 3-inchers.
You see, the screw doesn't even get through the door jamb.
Justin Doyle of Justin Doyle Homes installing 3-inch screws is common practice in all the homes his company builds, including the current ones going up in Liberty Township.
Yes, the first thing that we do is we take the 1-inch screws that typically come with the doors, and we have them all replaced with a 3-inch screw, because that allows us to get a little bit more meat, a little bit more beef out of the stud when you go to screw the door hinges and strike plates in.
And you can clearly see the difference. The factory screws barely clear the frame.
This doesn't even hold the door jamb in. This actually goes straight through the jamb and goes right into the stud cap, or into the stud adjacent to it. It's a standard practice that all of our guys have been trained to do. Truthfully, I'm not sure exactly what the other builders do, but that's certainly something that we found that our customers really benefit from that. It gives them a little bit more security as far as making sure that nobody can go knock the door down with their foot when they walk up to the door, because of the extra security and the extra strength that the 3-inch screws give them.
And with the bigger screws in place, kicking in a door is virtually impossible. And the cost at a local hardware store for the 3-inch screws, about 65 cents a piece.
So you can do that with your strike plate as well as the hinges. It really adds some more security to your doors. Now, there are many devices on the market. Do you have the ability to see who's behind your door without opening it? Do you have the ability to speak to them? Do you have the ability to record them, and speak to them and see them even if you're not at home? I have what's called a Ring doorbell, which has a motion detector on it, that you're able to set the motion detector to the correct yardage that's preferable for your house, so you don't get false alarms. You're also able to set the periphery with these ring doorbells for motion detection. And so anybody approaching your house, this is my setup.
Hi, you are currently being recorded.
So anybody approaching my door, I have a recording on the bell. It's a standard recording you can pick out. It says that you're being recorded. And if they're looking to do a mischief, they will probably turn away because they understand that the recording is to the cloud and not just on the doorbell, even if they destroy the doorbell. And so it's a real deterrent. And so you have a record of that person as well, and that individual. And it's a great security measure. In addition, we have to pay attention to the windows, because if you remember, they were the second port of entry into the house. Make sure your windows have metal locks on and not plastic locks. Casement windows and sliding glass doors are very easy to harden by cutting a piece of wood pre-cut to fit the tracks of those casement windows or sliding doors and prevent them from opening. If you have landscape lighting, keep your landscape lighting on the entire night from dawn to dusk to prevent people from hiding in your shrubbery. Trim your bushes around your windows so they can't conceal themselves around your house, or use these bushes or whatever to climb onto to have access to your windows. Don't forget your situational awareness as well. When you step out the door, or you're driving home and you drive into the driveway, do you observe what's around your house? Are there cars or people that you're unfamiliar with milling around your house? So you need your situational awareness. If you get a knock on the door, pizza delivery, or repairman, you haven't ordered pizza and you haven't requested repairman, your situational awareness should go from yellow to orange. You need heightened awareness, because this may be a ruse to get into your home. It's very easy these days to install motion detections and floodlights around your home. It requires no hard wiring at all. They're mostly wireless. They're fairly inexpensive, and it's a great deterrent. Anybody stepping into your yard, the floodlights go on because of motion detection, and you can record as well. Home alarms are only effective if you activate them. 60 to 80% of homeowners who have alarms never put them on. Homes with alarms are less likely to be burglarized, as it's an extra layer of inconvenience for thieves to deal with. If you have a home alarm and you use home alarm signs, make sure these signs are fresh and new. Old worn signs will just tell a perpetrator that you probably got a defunct alarm system, which doesn't work and is probably not functional, so it means nothing at all. don't use these signs. You loot, we shoot, protected by Smith & Wesson. They may be humorous, but there is a problem. If there is, unfortunately, an incident at your home, a smart prosecutor will use these and enter them into evidence against you to suggest murderous intent. So don't put these signs up. Booby traps are outright illegal, and there's no legal defense to them. And even signs, booby trap signs without a booby trap are problematic. Can give rise to civil liability and invalidate your homeowner's insurance, especially if there's an emergency services that need to get to your house, or maybe a house adjacent to your house, and they're concerned about booby traps. Do not use.
Our condo doesn't allow signs at all, so we don't.
Good. No home alarm signs?
No alarms either.
Yeah, because that's actually a good deterrent. It's perpetrators will look for signs, home alarms. So, I cannot emphasize more strongly that a home defense plan is of the utmost importance. Realize this: police response at its quickest is 10 minutes away. In critical situations, we just have seconds. So when seconds count, we need to be proactive with a plan to defend ourselves. Failure of planning will result in a reactive defensive action, which typically leads to failure of protection. In your planning, buy a first aid kit, know what's in it, know how to use it. Stage fire extinguishers around your house, know where they are, know how to use them. Create emergency families for you and your family, and everybody should be familiar of these plans for fire, home invasion, attempted break-in, and natural disasters. Code word for family members are of great importance. If you hear a bump in the middle of the night and you don't know if that's a perpetrator or one of your kids, and you say, "Josh, is that you?" Invariably the perpetrator is going to say, "Yeah, it is." What the answer you need is, "Yeah, it's me," with the code word for that individual person. Everybody in your family should know how to dial 911. If there is an unfortunate circumstance where you have perpetrators in your house and they're in the living quarters and you're in the sleeping quarters, don't go down or to those living quarters and try to clear the house if you have a firearm. Very difficult maneuver, requires a lot of training and a lot of skill. Barricade yourself, call the police, let the professionals come and clear the house. Flashlights are of great importance for a home security plan. Make sure all your flashlights have a minimum of 60 lumens of illumination. So this is relative to flashlights. Just before you go to bed, you're walking your dog to let him do his business before you go down for the night. And you are using your situational awareness, you are in color code yellow, you are aware. So you see somebody emerging from the shadows, approaching, so you shine your flashlight on this individual, you don't recognize him, so you're trying to gain some more information. So you say, "Hello, how are you? Can I help you? Do you need anything?" Trying to assess what's happening. If you have the correct flashlight, that's what you see. You go from color code yellow to color code red, back to the house, barricade yourself, call 911. Have appropriate flashlights. To formulate a plan that's specific for your layout of your house and considering the family members and the age of the kids is imperative. Everyone should be familiar with their responsibilities in an emergency. Different tasks can be given to different individuals. So these plans are not difficult. And yeah, we have a family of 4. Michael and Sarah, Sam and Jack. Michael has a defensive plan and he has defensive equipment. And he keeps his equipment by his bedside in a lockbox with an appropriate flashlight, a well-charged cell phone, and if he has the window being broken down or the door being bashed in, he immediately goes to his lockbox, gets out his protective gear, and proceeds to a designated area in the house which is the landing between the living room and the sleeping quarters. He feels he's appropriately able to defend his family from this area. His wife gets up immediately as well. She goes to his defensive equipment, grabs the cell phone. She immediately proceeds to Sam's room. She gets Sam, and they go to Jack's room and barricade themselves in an area in Jack's room. She calls 911. Now, if this invasion continues, he can either defend his family from this area in Massachusetts. My suggestion is Michael should go to Jack's room, barricade himself with his family. If he stands here, we don't have the stand your ground or the castle doctrine law. You're obligated to retreat. If these perpetrators enter this room, he's able to give commands. I am in here, I have a weapon, I am able to defend myself. We have called 911 already. The police are on their way. That would be the more appropriate reaction plan for Massachusetts. The most logistical way to formulate a plan realistically is to run hypothetical scenarios in your head and process how you would attempt to deal with these threats. There should be no loose ends to your planning, and this is your mental exercises. Planning will give you the ability to mount an appropriate defensive action which has the resemblance of an organized plan versus a chaotic reactive defensive action. So, part of your mental exercises is hypothetical scenarios. What are you going to do if you hear somebody kicking down your front door or a window? Do you have a plan to react to that? Does your family know how to react to that? What happens if my burglar alarm goes off in the middle of the night? What are you going to do? What is your family going to do? What happens if you open the door and a stranger produces a weapon? Have you got a plan? And the only way you can mount a logistical and appropriate plan is to run these scenarios. And you can create any scenario, but running them through your head gives you some kind of resemblance of a plan. What if you have somebody in the middle of the night and you try to distinguish from the family member? We know this already. Codes. Have a code word. What happens if you're sleeping and you hear some noises outside your bedroom window, so you wake up and you peer outside, somebody's trying to steal your car? Do you have a plan for that? Do you go down and intervene and try to abort that theft? Or do you stand by, call 911 and be a good witness? Understand, there's no state in the union that you can use deadly force to protect property. And typically what happens is that you go down, you try to prevent the theft, and it escalates, and then you have to defend yourself because there is now a deadly threat, but the prosecutors will then bring it back to you. Oh, you tried to defend your property with deadly force. Better to act as a good witness. But you've got to run these scenarios in your head, otherwise you don't know how to react. In public, what do you do if you're threatened with a weapon or a knife in public? Do you know how to react to that? What happens if a threat materializes between somebody, your wife and yourself? Do you know how to react to that? Big moral dilemma. What happens if you see a deadly attack in progress? Are you going to intervene? And that you have to think through. Now you're going to be putting yourself in a position where you're going to be judged by the law with your defensive actions in trying to protect somebody else. Are you going to defend that person?
I can see myself doing anything if I see a child being harmed.
That's an easy one, because usually we have immediately there's a soft spot for a child. What happens? You see a drug dealer perpetrating a deadly attack on one of their clients. Are you going to feel the same?
I have a story. My uncle, he walked into a construction store, like Home Depot, but very small scale. And the guy come in to kill the owner. And my uncle turned to him, "Oh, my son, don't do that." And then he killed my uncle as well.
Yeah, it's a problem. So you need to have a plan and understand how you're going to react to these circumstances. Are you going to react the same way? You're seeing a crime being committed like a robbery or vandalism. Are you going to stand by, act as a good witness after calling 911? Or are you going to try and abort this vandalism or robbery? You need to make these decisions. The only way you can understand how you're going to react is to run them hypothetically through your head.
So, question, in the scenario where you just mentioned that, let's say someone is trying to get your car, like break into your car, or you see this guy is trying to break your window, and then if you take a weapon and then just shoot that guy, so what's the consequence?
You're going to go to jail for a murder.
So that's
the whole of the country, the State of the Union. There's no legal defense for protecting property with deadly force.
But in that case, it's hard to say because that guy is trying to break in with who knows what he holds for.
In your car? Oh, you in your car?
No, let's say I'm in my room and this person is...
Well, your life is not in danger. Your property is in danger. Property can be replaced.
Yeah.
You have insurance. Remember one of the protections? Insure your assets and your property. So in your planning, situational awareness.
So it's only if you are attacked upon can you execute.
Exactly. Okay. So in conclusion, accept the fact that bad things happen. With effective planning, you can prevent tragedy associated with crimes and natural disasters. The absolute worst time to start thinking of a plan of action is in an emergency. Ben Franklin said it very clearly. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Thank you very much. And I'll take any further questions that anybody has. Yes.
I've always had the feeling that carrying a weapon is more dangerous than not carrying a weapon. But the risk of harm to you is enhanced, I think, if you have a weapon versus not. And the risk of an accident or a mistake is much greater if you have a deadly weapon than if you don't.
Well, that is the conventional wisdom, and it permeates throughout the country. I can tell you now, it's a responsibility. If you have a weapon, you need to know how to use it. You need to train so you don't have accidents and you are proficient with it. The same thing, when you get a driver's license, you have to learn how to drive. A car is a very dangerous thing. If you don't know how to drive it, you're going to kill somebody, you're going to kill yourself. So no, it's not a liability. It is an asset if you know how to use it properly and you're well trained. And again, if you don't have a weapon, and how are you going to defend yourself and your family in an appropriate manner if you are threatened with deadly force? You are then dead in the water. You have no ability to defend yourself and your family. So I tend to disagree with you in that aspect, where it's more of a liability. It's a great benefit to you if you're trained, you take your responsibility seriously.
You can be trained up to your neck, but emotions happen, okay? And you don't always have control of your emotions when dangerous or unforeseen situations happen. And I just think, just my opinion, I guess, the risk is just much more. When I was in the military, we were told, okay, if you have your 45 there, all right, you never, ever pull that out unless you're going to use it. So you unless you really were pressed hard, you're not going to use that weapon.
If you press
the legal risk, the risk to other people, it just.
So now, what are you going to do if you are pressed hard?
Pardon me?
What are you going to do if you are pressed hard? As you said, you only take it out if you're pressed hard. So when you're pressed hard, what are you going to do if you don't have a weapon?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
You mentioned that you only take out your 45 when you're pressed hard.
I still don't understand.
He said you're only.
We need a translator.
He said you're going to. What do you do if you've gotten to the point where you have to utilize the 45 and you don't have it?
How do you defend yourself?
It's just percentage. It's so.
No, there's no percent.
If you're in an urban environment, but if you're out here in a suburban area where you have local police real close by, you don't have a lot of crime. To me, an accident with a family member or a neighbor outweighs the risk.
Okay, I'll give you a statistic. In this country, 2 million crimes on people are aborted just due to not that the weapon is used, just due to the fact that that person is armed. 2 million crimes are aborted. And that's an actual fact. So you can't minimize it by saying, well, it's not really necessary because it's safe, and there is a need for it.
What about less lethal, something like burn?
Absolutely. We mentioned less lethal tools such as tasers.
In Massachusetts, if you have one, you can't use the pepper spray.
You can use a pepper spray.
Not in the launcher.
Not in the?
Not in the Bernal, in that Bernal launcher, which is the.
Yeah. Okay.
That to me seems.
Massachusetts is an anomaly all by itself. We have to dance around the law. We're getting to the point where the same thing I'll get to you in a second. In Canada, you are not allowed to use your firearm for self-defense. If you use a firearm for self-defense, you're criminally charged. They're for sporting and recreation only.
But one more thing, you're cornered in your bedroom. Somebody, crazy person, who else would come into your home at night, bust your door down, come upstairs. Now you're forced to. You can't escape. You have a launcher. You don't have a gun handy. Guns are in your safe. You don't have a gun handy. You use the gun. You use the burner launcher. It has a pepper spray to it. It's illegal in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
You disable the person. What happens to you?
So you still live another day to defend yourself. Okay, so you got to understand that. And that's why you need that concealed carry insurance. Because then you're going to be mounting up a lot of money to defend yourself. But you're still alive. You're not haven't surrendered and say, so be it.
So you've raised actually two questions. The first one, which sort of talks to what's going on here, is that there are a lot of non-firearm-related implements which are considered deadly weapons, okay, that are not knives and are not firearms. A baseball bat can be considered a deadly weapon, okay? A 2x4 can be considered a deadly weapon, okay? So the question really, it gets even more gray, because depending on the prosecutor, they could determine that the stuffed animal that you pulled out of the closet is a deadly weapon. And I'm exaggerating, but how do you resolve that?
Okay, so it's very simple. And you're 100% correct, and I mentioned it. Any one of those tools, whether it be a baseball bat, pepper spray, a taser. There was a lady in Newton last year that used a taser. She was prosecuted by the DA and sent to jail. It got overturned by the Superior Court because she's just one of those people that you're not allowed to defend yourself. The thing is that as long as you act as a reasonable person, and as long as you act within the coordinates of the law, life is in immediate fear of death or grievous bodily harm, you are the innocent party, you have no means of escape, and you used appropriate force, a reasonable force, then you should be okay. But you know, the same as that lawyer. If you point a gun at somebody trying to, and it doesn't abide by what they consider the law, you're going to be up for aggravated assault. It's the same thing as holding a bat at somebody. They in fear of death or grievous bodily harm because you are threatening them. It's aggravated assault. So any tool can be considered lethal force if in a certain circumstance.
And the second question, if you don't mind, I sort of touched on it earlier when we talked. We're allowed, Massachusetts has really gummed up the works because we used to be a concealed carry state for many years, and then about 10 or 12 years ago, they basically they changed the laws so that they didn't fully define how you could carry, whether it was open carry or concealed carry. And so in talking with lots of different police chiefs and the Firearms Bureau in Boston, we couldn't get an answer. Nobody had an answer. My concern is that if you're in, say, Weston, and I don't want to put our police chief, the previous police chief in having this discussion would not have a problem if you had open carry on your hip. Whereas we know that in Newton, the police chief would cite you for disturbing the peace with open carry on your hip.
I can guarantee you, if you open carried in Weston and the police chief was okay with it, my guess is that the law would come after you, the district attorney would come after you. So it's the culture of the law. It's not we are an open carry state, actually. But let me tell you, that's not something you want to do in the state of Massachusetts. You are going to go to jail.
So as a course of action, always concealed carry.
Absolutely. So there was an incident not too long ago where an individual went to the school to pick up his daughter. He was a concealed carry permit holder, and you can't take a firearm onto a school grounds. So he did the legal thing. He unholstered, he locked it in his glove box, and went to pick up his daughter. He got his daughter in the car and said, well, let me put my concealed carry back in my holster. There was a woman in the truck right next to him. She saw him take out the firearm, put it in his holster. She called 911. There's a guy with a gun. They stopped him on the road. He told them he didn't brandish the gun. He didn't threaten anybody with the gun. They arrested him. They took away his firearm. Just because somebody saw him holstering his firearm. Open carry is a misnomer in the state. Don't do it.
Well, we want to thank you. This was very informative. We thank you for coming.